I'm making this now as kind of a preemptive thing. I was gonna make an entire month of this, but this has not been as fruitful as I thought. I sincerely made this series, or a series of videos, or series of recordings, all in one night. All in the effort to find a legitimately good story written by MrAngryDog. And I'm not saying that I'm trying to patch things up with MrAngryDog. I still very much dislike the guy. But I felt like I have not given this guy. I felt like I genuinely didn't give this guy a good shake. So I tried to read most of his stuff, or a fair amount of his stuff, some of his newer things, and I was stunned at how he did not put any effort into actually frightening the reader. I couldn't get into it. It's just, and again, my annoyance stems from towards this mainly stems from how little I can actually speak on. There's almost nothing for me to talk about, and a lot of this is just me repeating my same talking points over and over again. If you essentially want me to sum up a lot of my problems with MrAngryDog as an author, he, and again, it's not necessarily that he's an inherently bad writer, but he wants to call these stories creepypasta, and creepypasta are horror stories. He does not try to frighten the reader. In fact, he seems to shy away from doing anything that might disturb or unnerve the reader. For some reason, he seems to just revel in sort of very weak, limp revenge fantasy stories where he's torturing people who in his eyes and most people's eyes, society deems as deviants, like rapists, like pedophiles, killers, murderers, and whatnot. So I think at one point he actually even outright mentioned the name of a real life killer in one of his stories, and a character had a long tangent about it that really wasn't relevant to anything. And while I do. I think it somewhat clears the air to some. He seemed to be the extreme opposite of what Snuff Bomb is. Snuff Bomb's material is so disgusting and stupid, brash, and he's and whatnot that he seems to revel in just being as grotesque as possible in his work. And I don't mean that as a compliment. It got to the point where I actually felt that he had some kind of moral deficiency, which I really don't like saying, but that's how I genuinely felt. And I don't, and MrAngryDog seems to be on the opposite end of that fence, where he doesn't have a moral deficiency, but his view on the world and on morality seems so black and white, save for the obvious things that we complain about. You can go and look at the original videos to see what I'm talking about on that. And it affects his work because though anyone who he wants to push as a character for people to remember are always characters who are doing something that the author wants to be seen as morally just. You can see it in Jane the Killer. The one thing that he took umbrage with when people were thinking about the character was people saying that she killed Jeff's victims or she's just as insane. He'll say something like, "Oh, she's just as twice as insane and twice as powerful and whatnot," but then he'll say, "Oh, he doesn't kill, and she only kills people who deserve it." Because that's what insane people do. Just and again, if he wants to write certain stories, he can write his stories any way he wants. But calling these creepypasta does not fit. And the fact that he seems to always be confused as to why people really dislike his stories and dislike his work as a whole, it really astonishes me. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they are innately bad stories. Well, it has less to do with that and the fact that he's calling them creepypasta. And that, in the end, really is what seals the fate of a lot of his stories. It's like having Barney like Barney the Dinosaur, and trying to package it as a show for teens. Yeah, no one's buying into it. Period. No one's going to appreciate it. And I don't. I personally dislike I personally dislike Barney the Dinosaur, but it has a certain demographic. It's for certain people, and I think it's a really derivative show. But for even for kids, but again, certain demographic kids are gonna like it, and I can't get too up in arms about it because again, that's what's supposed to appeal to them. Then you have a story like what he writes, and it's the same kind of mentality where he wants it to be labeled as horror, and he does not know how to use horror elements. He knows nothing about that, and from what I've seen, and from how much he seems to like to go on about horror movies, he does try to paint himself as a horror aficionado, and he does seem to have a genuine love of horror themed cinema and works of literature that revolve around that as well. But it doesn't reflect in his work. Nothing I've ever read from him seems genuinely inspired. He is not a good writer. He's not a good horror writer, and he really doesn't shouldn't be writing horror if he can't put his all into actually trying to frighten the viewer. That's my too long, don't read, don't listen kind of thing. Pretty much summing up the intent of these videos, or just trying to cover it, and that's essentially why I gave up and decided to splice all these together. So for what it is, enjoy all. Again, there are some stories that even if I didn't really have much to say, I find generally entertaining. One in particular is one that really hit me where this guy does not know what he's doing when it comes to writing horror. So enjoy, and I'm going to be doing something else for the rest of them for October. It will be creepypasta related, and or you can give me some suggestions. I'm thinking of doing kind of a slime beast month because I know we've kind of shat on him a lot. So I want to go on his website and see if there are any stories that I really think that more confident that I can find that on his page because again, he's hit and miss, but when he hits, he really hits hard. So uh, just enjoy the video and whatnot. I need a drink. Hello, hello everyone. This is Vince 12 signing in again, and boy oh boy, am I gonna be happy because this month I'm doing an Angry Dog month for my posture critiques thing. I'm kind of cheating in that aspect, but okay, let me explain. A certain someone, I'm not going to mention a name, has been rather vocal towards our video, and by our, I mean pretty much it's just Jacob's, but most of the criticism towards MrAngryDog and his stories has come from me, and he doesn't rather frown upon what we said. And before he decided to get all huffy and get upset about what we had to say, he mentioned that they are working on some kind of revived version of Jane the Killer. And I responded, and this was not me being facetious. I doubt it's going to be of any good quality, but when it comes out, I will give it a fair shake because that's only the right thing to do. I don't think certain people are incapable of writing a good story. I don't think Mr. Dangry Dog is incapable of writing a good story. Everyone has some modicum of potential to succeed in whatever form of media that they go into, except if you don't have legs, in which case you can't be a marathon runner. I'm sorry. That's not really media, but whatever. Oh yeah, poor little Tank Tank. Well, he didn't succeed because fuck the rules and whatnot. Uh, so I decided I'm going to be going on to Mr. Angry Dog's DeviantArt page. I will be reading his stories and critiquing them fairly. I want to make it perfectly clear I do not like this person. I have had not the best interactions with him in the past, but I will be approaching this as fairly as possible, and that I give my word. And I will be linking the stories in the description, and I do not want any of you people to go and pester this guy and swarm him with hate mail or whatever. If you're going to go on there, I want you to go on here with the pretense of reading the story for yourselves and coming to your own conclusion on whether or not you feel it really matches expectations or is any of any merit. I want one thing I want to make perfectly clear: just because I dislike someone doesn't mean I can't appreciate the media in which they put out. If Mr. Angry Dog does surprise me throughout this entire month with an actual good story, I will point it out. I will point out when I think a story is actually decent. I will point out when a story actually has merit in its premise or execution. And I will leave any personal biases at the door. Although, just to get it out of the way, again, once again, I do not like Mr. Angry Dog. I very much dislike him and his fans, but I guess I'm just doing this for the sake of interest. I was going to do this just to troll the person who kept commenting, but let's take the high road, you know? We don't need to be immature about all this. So, yeah, that's basically how this is going to go down. So, be sure to stay tuned for all that, and I promise I'll try to make this all as engaging as possible. This story is entitled Bosque de los Muertos. Uh, excuse me if I mispronounced that. Bosque de los Muertos, translated to Forest of the Dead, was once a local national forest in the United States, known for its lush green plantation and its cedar oak trees that filled the air with the sweet fragrance, and to its crystal brooks and waterfalls. Reason why it was nicknamed the Forest of the Dead is because the forest produces wild, windy whispers, through the trees, giving the illusion of spirits communicating with the living. The forest is secluded on a small island on the Pacific Ocean. On boats, tourists would stop by for a break and walk the beautiful nature trail, basically to get away from it all. Now, under federal law, the site is closed to the general public and people cannot go there anymore. Many claim that an unidentifiable pathogen ravaged the island, and by orders of the Center Disease of Control and Prevention, people are not allowed to venture into the territory unless you're a scientist or with the military. But the truth is, the spirit of one of the park workers haunts the island. According to a now retired forest official, he recalls exactly how the forest closed down and why. You see, there was a young lady I used to work with a few years ago when the national forest was in its heyday. A sweet girl from the name of Nagasaki. What? What? That's okay. Her name was. Oh, I'm sorry. A sweet girl from Nagasaki. I'm so sorry. My bad. Her name was Emiko Takahashi. She moved to the States when she was only 19 years old and joined the park crew at 24. Emiko was not only a wonderful person to work with, she was very kind-hearted and simplistic and sympathetic. Excuse me. She cheered not only the park workers up on their baddest of days and helped them out with their problems, she helped tourists who were lost and reunited little children with their parents whenever we had a horrendous disaster. Oh, sorry, let's get the line. And just brought a smile and warmed heart. You mean warm heart? Excuse me. To everyone she met. She was very careful and strong. My heart hurt for her, though. Man, whenever what? My heart hurt for her though when we had a horrendous visitor. Had a bad visitor, but this one I still remember. Long story short, the visitor, this man, threw a little boy at her because he was mad and extremely intoxicated. Another one, a woman in her late 20s, high on crystal meth, yelled at her for forbidding her to go into the forest at night. I don't know. She could have been like a flower or some goddamn thing. A flower child or something. I don't know why I had a god, excuse me. Amiko has been with us for over a decade, and she made the National Forest a very happy and relaxing spot for everyone. I really thought that she was going to settle down with her love interest. You, okay, Angry Dog, don't. It's not called love interest in real. That's a writer's term, dude. Don't. Don't have your characters include that in dialogue. Uh, a young man from Albany. Looked just like Randy from the Scream franchise. What? Okay, this is getting a little too specific, but whatever. Look just from the Scream franchise. Maybe get married, fulfill her dream of living in Los Angeles. She always talked about that so much and how happy it made her. Her and the young man were becoming fast lovers. That was 4 years ago. But I never thought her life would end at age 34. Boyfriend was there at her bedside, holding her hand. Poor woman was deathly ill. The relationship me and her had was like uncle and niece relationship. Just before she took her last breath and shared one ki- one last kiss with her lover, she said these final words to me. I want people to appreciate life and keep the little ones, children, safe. I'm not going to let anyone stop me from achieving this, not even death itself. As she passed away, the last lingering image I saw was that of her boyfriend leaning his head on her chest, sobbing, and Miko's parents comforting him. I wanted to cry, myself, you know? I thought God was going to take her into his kingdom, but her spirit somehow is roaming the island even to this day. A month after her untimely death, a string of deaths began to occur. Most of them were men and women who had a history of abusing others, i.e., domestic violence, child abuse, etc. Others were people who hated their lives and took their very existence for granted. Rumors began to surface that deaths were attributed to Miko's spirit. According to local residents, she wanted to dispense her own brand of justice. Soon after, the island was closed down by the government and the U.S. military because people were so afraid of stepping foot in the national forest. It had gotten a bad reputation of being one of the most terrifyingly haunted places on Earth. But that didn't stop people from trespassing, to stealing anything that wasn't nailed down, to ghost hunters recording evidence, to Ouija board crazed nut jobs trying to summon Amiko's spirit. In life, Amiko couldn't stand Ouija boards because she thought they were stupid. Reason why Amiko would never answer an Ouija board summoning is because she would never make her presence felt by a group of idiots and simply ignore them. It was not very far. It was not very far to get if you were on a boat or just merely swimming. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Okay, I'm back. I accidentally exited the thing for a second. And my timer is almost running out. God. I'm gonna have to edit this. Pardon me, people. Technical difficulties. I'm gonna do a break thing. Oh, never mind. However, the previously mentioned, except for the Ouija board users, had to make sure that they knew what they were doing and possessed nerves of steel. Most of all, they had to be careful not to encounter Amiko's spirit, whom they now dubbed the Soul Hunter. According to urban legend, if you happen to encounter the Soul Hunter, she'll ask you the following questions. Are you an abuser? Do you hate your life? Or are you a horrible person? These questions may vary depending on who you are, since she can see into your soul, sensing how good and bad of a person you are. She can even detect a tragedy that you've been subjected to and take pity on you. If you have hurt anyone physically or abused a child or your spouse or girlfriend, don't appreciate life and take it for granted or you're all around a horrible person. Escape is not an option. You're pretty much screwed. Um okay, that was okay, I'm just gonna say it in English. The Forest of the Dead. All around, this wasn't a bad story, I would say. I don't think it really works as a creepypasta, mostly because let me set up. Actually, I was laying on my back on my bed. This doesn't really work as a creepypasta, and it's one thing, and I think this seems to be kind of a thing that some people tend to forget when they're writing stories that they want to attribute as creepypasta. One of the things that you need to really do is put an emphasis on the horror element. The horror element here is pretty much like a classic haunted house type scenario. This is what, like he puts it right here, Japanese horror. Japanese horror is most known for very subtle, passive aggressive, uncomfortable, like very just you feel unnerved by the end of this. This I was genuinely engrossed to some degree in this story, but I was not frightened, was not disturbed or unnerved. Again, I don't think the story fails as a story in of itself. It's a nice little tale, maybe like a small haunted ghost story. Yeah, haunted ghost, yeah, as opposed to the non-haunted ghost. But still, this I don't think this really works for what he's trying to go for. Do I think that this is a bad story? No, I don't think it. Like, I'm just repeating myself now. Okay, what really? What? Okay, what will I say to give some advice to really make this work? Um, this story, if you really want to make it work, and stories like this work best when it's told from the perspective of someone who's experienced this or lived through this, like a witness who's bared attention, like been confronted with this malevolent spirit and seen her for what she was. Again, one thing to bear in mind: Japanese horror is more about subtext and subtlety more than anything else. Someone, let's say, for the sake of throwing it out and trying to improve this, someone goes out into this forest and they walk around because they heard of what happened there. Maybe a group of several people, friends who are just nosy. Like you included the Ouija board. I can imagine that we can incorporate that into the story and have it to some basically people who are curious about spirits or whatnot. Maybe some of them are, as you described, just broken people or don't appreciate their lives and whatnot. Will go into this forest and there's one person who is very much a decent person, probably the most well adjusted and well meaning person in that group, who will be the survivor of what happens afterwards. Um, as the night goes on, as they try to find evidence of whatever malevolent spirit that they're trying to look for, Miko, they get picked apart one by one. And again, some cliches work for certain scenarios, and I really think that this cliche would work in this scenario because, again, we want to stress the importance of this character wanting to go and kill people or for just basically wasting their lives or just being bad people. So these people will be spared relatively. In fact, let's even go a little bit further. The main character is much better than else, but as you said before, that this character some tragedy in her, and the spirit, as it's about to kill, will take pity on her and just simply leave. Basically, play this off as some kind of Blair Witch kind of scenario. And I'm not a big fan of the Blair Witch, but it's a classic format of storytelling where these people go into the woods and they start getting picked off one by a force that they don't really understand. And later on, this woman gets some kind of, or even small hints to clue her into what was happening. Maybe the park attendant who was speaking in this could have warned them previously to stay away from this place, or had tried to get her out, and he ends up taking her home, and he ends up explaining everything to her. So I think that would have worked better. And again, I'm trying to approach this matter as fairly as possible. This story is relatively recent. I can't say I didn't enjoy it to some degree. It was again, I was slightly engaged, and I think this story, my initial impression of MrAngryDog's work came from Jane the Killer, and that's not a good first impression. We got to admit that right now. And going based on this, I can conclude he has improved from what I've seen the last time. It's been a long time since I've read Jane the Killer for the first time. So, uh, yeah, this is not bad. Again, Mr. Angry Dog, if I could give you some decent advice, I would say you need to put more emphasis on the horror element. Right now, the one problem that you're having with some of the stories I've seen that you wrote, right, and it's not just you. A lot of writers have this problem. I had this problem when I first started. My first creepypasta had this problem to a T, and I'm very much embarrassed of it nowadays. Um, you should never ever try to make a fad instead of telling a story. Right now, you're trying to make a modern ghost story, and you're trying to push this character more. It feels like you're trying to push that character more than anything else. and it's understandable. You like a character that you really enjoy writing for to kind of take off in popularity. Like that's always a nice thing to do, but you don't want the character itself to overshadow the story. The main focus of this story should be the horror element, and the horror element supposedly is his ghost, but the horror it's there's nothing unnerving about it when we you pretty much explain and outline what its motives is, what are rather, and what it does to people. And for the most part, people of rather sound and uh, rational thinking mind will, even if they do buy into it and actually believe that what you're saying is actually grounded in some form of reality, they won't see themselves as a potential threat to whatever's happening. And plus, you push it off to a place where most people wouldn't even know where to go to find this alleged place. And I know you probably made it up. Most people would do that. I would probably have done that because it it's always a pain to try to find out about a place that you really want to write about, uh, and to later find out that you were completely inaccurate about it. So I can understand that. But this is not how you approach this, basically. If I were you, I would go back to. I wouldn't say revise this story in particular. You can take this character again. Focus on the horror element. Stop trying to make a fad, and focus on making a really good story. And you can't just use a story to package a character. And that's the most I'll really say. And if you guys disagree, if you guys didn't like the story, please tell me why. And again, I am blocked from actually commenting on his video. It's and his DeviantArt page anymore. Go to him, leave constructive criticism. If if I see you people, anyone there who has come from my videos, go and pester him unnecessarily when I directly told you I would directly admonish you myself, because I really don't want anything to do with people who want to go and stir shit up for no particular reason. Again, my reason for disliking uh, Mr. Angry Dog come from bad personal, just bad interactions with him. I spent enough time talking to him, opinion on him. If you haven't done that, I don't think you have much grounds to really insult him yourself. Okay, so this has been Vince Swell signing out. Look forward to the next post on Mr. Angry Dog Month. Again, I'll be as fair and unbiased as possible, and I'll try to keep as calm as possible if I ever get something that frustrates me. But then again, I got through reading The Origin of Laughing Jack. It's everything's all uphill from here, you know. So yeah, have a good one. Deku no Karufu, Fear of the Dark. In any, if any of you have seen your fair share of kick-ass martial arts movies, action movies, and Japanese horror movies, you have to see Deku no Kuru, English translation, Fear of the Dark. It is like a collection of every Jackie Chan, Steven Seagal, Danny J. Bruce Lee, Wes Craven, and Rob Zombie horror movie rolled into one. It was Expendables and the story of Ricky meets The Last House on the Left. It was a horrifically gory, kick-ass action horror movie. It received rave reviews. It was praised by audience, horror movie buffs, and gore hounds alike. When the movie first came to theaters in 2014, cinemas were packed to the brim. Men, women, teens, you name it. You always look forward to many scenes of gratuitous blood, shed, and gore. Fight scenes for the guys, strong sex scenes for the couples, and many terrifying moments that adrenaline junkies always look forward to. While Fear the Dark was the most talked about action horror film there is, and even being praised by critics, there was a reason why deleted scenes were restored and presented in the unrated director's cut with bonus features that included what that included an epic alternate ending and a bonus ending was cut out of the film and released to DVD, Blu-ray, and digital copy. The bonus ending was too nightmarish and shocking for anyone to handle. And by shocking, I don't mean Lucio Falsi's City of the Living Dead shocking, but just shocking. almost like the footage was taken from the deep web and added to film after the editing. The bonus ending was cut from the movie. It didn't feature any of the actors in the film: Jet Li, Jackie Chan, Johnny Teo, Bruce Locke, Felissa Rose, Lucy Liu, Ideo Kerr, Jennifer Lawrence, Lawrence Fishburne, Samuel L. Yoko Maki, and Hugh Jackman. Felicia Rose was cast as one lead villain, Amiko. Yeah, I know you're making this up. Amiko Fujimoto. If you're gonna, uh, uh, Angry Dog, if you're gonna make up a like there are other Japanese names you can pick. Don't pick the same one because it makes it abundantly clear that you're just making this up. And I know that's supposed to be the thought, but it also kind of hurts when you're including all these actual actors and whatnot, and that makes it very easy to check on this. Creepypasta are work best when they're grounded in reality enough to feel real, or at least most. What you're going for should be that, since it's supposed to be like a found footage type horror story, man. Despite her being American, Felicia played the part of Japanese woman flawlessly. What? Uh, are you saying that she wore yellow face? Interesting. Now, getting to the bonus ending. After the blue screen showing the film had been rated R title, it faded into what looked like a Silent Hill type house. It wasn't filmed in Tokyo as you would expect in the movie. No, this was an unknown location in the United States. The house looked like everything was intact. Some of the rooms were very pristine, despite the foundation looking like a total shithole throughout. Nobody was there, not a soul. There was no sign of life. So from this point of view, this house was tucked away in the countryside. I was hoping that this was a movie set, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. Felicia Rose was giving a very chilling performance in the bonus inning, and then cut to some blooper reels and a camera and production crew. But no, this looked like it was filmed in someone's house, not a Hollywood backdrop or a villa in Japan. This was different. The camera cuts to what looks like Mado Injiro. Come on, man, with all these Japanese. Come on, Madden Injaro, Jiro, not the same actor playing her. This was Felicia Rose. This wasn't Felicia Rose, rather a preteen girl. Fog was drifting through her room, and the production quality looked the same as the British version of Ducks or Duck and Cover's Project to Survive Nuclear Fallout survival training film. Okay, this is getting way too specific to the point where it feels absolutely absurd. Whoever was filming this was doing a shitty job, or maybe it was a fan-made scene added by the director. It wasn't. Okay, I think some words are missing there. The Japanese girl who looked like Rose's character has been wearing what looked like a very colorful pair of pajamas with oriental flower patterns, giving off a very beautiful mixture of blue, pink, purple, bright green, and orange. Her eyes were closed and what looked like she was half asleep or was preparing to give a good jump scare. I was a bit nervous. Wait, you were a bit. Who are you? Who's talking to us? Okay. I was a bit nervous, though. When you work with the actors and production crew on horror films, you get used to this. But something about this doesn't look right, or didn't look right yet. That was the right tense, excuse me. The fog was real, but the all too perfect pale white ghoulish skin of this girl looked too real to be done by a makeup artist with such expertise. The girl was heard breathing softly. Her eyes were closed for a good half minute. There was no music, no sound effects by Foley artists added. It was just dead silent, except for the wind whispering. The girl then opened her eyes and looked at the camera. I was expecting to see scalia eyes or something freakish out of One Missed Call, Japanese version. But what I saw made my stomach freeze with fear, my heart jump into my throat. There were no eyes. The girl didn't have any eyes. For the first minute she was making animalistic growling, hissing, and screeching and groaning, which seemed to drop into bass. Then, as she began to breathe heavily, looking like she was ready to attack whoever was filming her, she said, I'm not even going to entertain the thought of trying to read this. You will no longer, English version, you will no longer be safe in the dark. The fear is real. You saw me, and now you're going to have nightmares for the rest of your life. Me and the film editors couldn't believe what we saw. There was a good reason why this bonus ending was cut from the movie and never shown in theaters or featured on DVD and Blu-ray. This girl, this creature, this ghoul, was she somehow an actor in the original Japanese version of Fear of the Dark killed on set? If so, was she going to give anyone who saw the deleted scene nightmares for the rest of their lives? If so, she was. Uh, what the hell did I just read? You know what? Just for funsies, I'm gonna look this up. Daku no Kaifu. Let's look this up. Maybe it's an actual movie. That would be awesome. This is so fucking stupid. Okay, yeah, this story. I can't. I can't even say it was. Yeah, I looked this up, and the first thing that comes up, and the only thing that comes up, is links leading back to DeviantArt to this story. So yeah, congratulations. Uh, that's what happens when. That's what happens when you uh, nickname or name try to base your story around. Again, a cast like this, there's no possible way that someone would look this up and know this was fake. It's considered cliche, but there's a reason that people go for the obscure movie that no one's ever seen type of trope. It's because those are harder to find. And you can actually write it off as that. You can't write this off when all this. You can't really write all this off when you're using all these name actors that are apparently this one epic movie. I can't say I hated this because it was too entertaining not to get a good laugh out of it, but it was too short, not quite silly enough. And you spend all this time, oh, the movie was so awesome and it had all these effects and whatnot. And apparently, this is being told from the perspective of some kind of narrator who's actually seen the deleted scene and is horrified, but he seems so obsessed with actually talking about how great this movie apparently was. And yet, it's like he was busy talking about the movie, and then he said, "Oh yeah, and this haunted thing happened, by the way." I don't know if you know this is true. And again, this is you have it tagged under horror films, Japanese horror, and horror stories. This isn't horror. This doesn't even lean towards horror. This creature comes out of nowhere, and again, you're approaching. You gave no details. Well, you did meager details, but it wasn't enough to actually not this thing was out of place. That ending came just so out of left field, and it just was so random. And I'm supposed to be horrified that a horror film had something that the creator thought looked really realistic, apparently. Oh, she had no eyes. Well, apparently this horror film was so scary that really this horror film was so scary and frightening that this one character not having eyes was the most upsetting thing that you've seen. Really? This is a failure of a horror story if I've ever seen one. Like again, I had high hopes for. I'll be. I'm not being even being facetious. I genuinely had fairly high hopes for the story at some point because the story that kind of introduced me to this, or I started this off with the forced one. Again, it wasn't bad. It wasn't really even that bad of a horror story, but it just somewhat failed. I could see some decent execution of it. This is just a failure on arrival. Like, and the thing is, the problem I always have with stories like this is labeled as a creepypasta. Have, you don't really have to label this as a creepypasta because it doesn't really work as that. You couldn't go and submit this on the wiki or on the website because there's nothing tangibly and frightening about this. Now, again, one of the people I like to bring up when I'm talking about stories or writers that I've ever had qualms with in terms of how they write, Slimebeast. Slimebeast does not label every single horror themed story that he writes as a creepypasta because he knows better. Certain stories that he writes are horror comedy, which, say for the one story that he wrote that was a parody, uh, you know, I Hate You. I think Slime Beats is a fairly decent when it comes to writing horror comedy. And he would never call it creepypasta because the emphasis is not really on trying to frighten you, it's trying to make you laugh. Black humor. This could have worked for a means of black humor, this obsessed movie fan who's really into things like that, and he stumbles upon this tape, and maybe even make the element of the story is that it's a conventional horror cliche pasta where a ghost is actually threatening to kill him, and he's such a movie buff he's completely blind to all these ghosts vague threats, and it's blatant, the fact that it's so blatantly evil. That could have made for a decent comedy story. But this is again Mr. Angry Dog trying to make a character a more, I can't even say what it's trying to do. It's just a really story. It's just not good. Hopefully, the next one I read will be a lot better than this. He does have a lot of creepypastas on his page. And again, I will be linking to this, so maybe, we'll find a diamond in the rough at some points. Something that I can finally hold up and say sincerely that this guy can be a genuinely good writer. This is not the best introduction to that.